This pain we feel when someone we care for acts in a way that feels breakable. It leaves us confused, asking why. We see it as a flaw in them, but it's a reflection of a universal human struggle. The reason is simpler and more profound than you think. Stay with me, because understanding the final step in this process is what can truly set you and your relationships free. Wounded child. It is a common question that arises in our shared human experience, a question that touches upon the very fabric of our connections with one another. Why do we sometimes encounter a profound immaturity in others, a way of being that seems to clash with their age or their potential? We might see it in a partner, a friend, or even a family member. It manifests as a kind of brittleness, an inability to face life's pressures with a sense of stability. And when the topic is specified toward the female experience, it is not a judgment, but an observation of a particular flavor of human suffering that we must approach with deep compassion and a desire to understand, not to blame. Because this is not a female problem, it is a human problem wearing a particular cultural costume. The root so often lies in a place we all share, a place deep within us. It is the realm of the inner child. All of us, regardless of who we are, carry the echoes of our younger selves. We carry the memories, the joys, but also the pains and the unmet needs. For many, this inner child is not at peace. It might be a child that did not feel seen or heard or safe. It might have learned that love was conditional, that its value was tied to its performance or its ability to please others. This creates a fundamental wound, a crack in the foundation of the self. This wound does not simply vanish with time. Instead, the person builds an adult life on top of this fragile foundation. They learn to function, to achieve, to navigate the world, but underneath it all, the wounded child remains, dictating the emotional weather. This is where the immaturity we perceive takes root. It is not a conscious choice to be difficult or volatile. It is the cry of that wounded part of the self. When this person faces a situation that feels threatening, a criticism, a perceived abandonment, a loss of control, it is not the adult who responds. It is the child who feared not being good enough. The reaction is not measured or wise. It is primal. It is the desperate, panicked reaction of a child trying to protect itself from a familiar pain. The emotional reaction is disproportionate to the present event because it carries the weight of all the past events that created the original wound. It's like a bell that, once struck, resonates with a lifetime of hurt. To understand this is to move from a place of frustration to a place of compassion. It does not mean we must accept harmful behavior, but it changes our perspective. We are no longer seeing a difficult adult. We are seeing a person who is in the grip of their own unresolved history. Their immaturity is a symptom of their suffering. It is a sign that a part of them has been frozen in time, left behind, and is now thrashing around in the subconscious, desperate for the safety and validation it never received. This is the starting point of our inquiry, not to label a behavior, but to understand the profound and universal pain from which it grows. And from this understanding, we can begin to see the path toward healing, not just for them, but for ourselves in how we relate to them, craving approval. Once we recognize the presence of this wounded inner self, we can begin to see how it shapes a person's entire way of being in the world. A mind that does not feel whole or secure from within will desperately seek to construct its sense of self from the outside. This gives rise to a powerful and often insatiable force, the craving for approval. It becomes the primary organizing principle of a person's life. Their choices, their words, their actions are not guided by an internal compass of values or a sense of authentic purpose, but by a constant, anxious scanning of their environment. The question that hums beneath the surface of their consciousness is always, am I liked? Am I accepted? Do you approve of me? This creates a state of profound dependency. The person's emotional well-being becomes outsourced, placed in the hands of others. A kind word can create a temporary high, a feeling of being seen and validated, but a perceived slight, a criticism, or even just a neutral expression can trigger a devastating crash. There is no stable inner ground, only the shifting sands of external opinion. This is a very painful way to live. It is a form of bondage. The individual is not free to be themselves because themselves is a mosaic of others' expectations and judgments. They become a performer, constantly adjusting the mask they wear to fit the audience of the moment. This dependency often manifests in ways that we label as immaturity. It can appear as a constant need for reassurance, asking again and again if everything is okay, if they are loved. It can lead to an inability to make decisions without consulting numerous people, fearing the responsibility of a choice that might lead to disapproval. It can also create a kind of social chameleon, someone whose personality seems to shift dramatically depending on who they are with. This is not a malicious deception. It is a survival strategy. It is the strategy of a person who has learned that their safety and worth depend on being what others want them to be. The tragedy of this is that it prevents the very thing the person craves most: genuine connection. Relationships built on this foundation are not authentic. They are transactional. I will be what you want me to be if you will give me the approval I need to feel okay. This is not a conscious bargain, of course, but it is the underlying dynamic. And when the other person inevitably fails to provide constant, perfect validation, because no one can, the entire structure collapses. This is when we see the emotional volatility, the accusations, the sense that a promise has been broken. The promise was the unspoken agreement that the other person would be the source of their self-worth. It is an impossible burden to place on another human being, and its collapse is what reveals the fragile, immature foundation beneath. Emotional storms. When a person's sense of self is built upon the fragile ground of external validation, their inner world is perpetually at risk of a storm. These are not just feelings of sadness or anger. They are overwhelming emotional tempests that hijack the entire system. For a mind that has cultivated stillness and awareness, an emotion can be observed as it arises, like a cloud passing in the sky. There is a space between the feeling and the self, but for the mind we are discussing, there is no space. The person does not feel angry, they become anger. They do not feel sad, they are sadness. The emotion floods everything, and all capacity for reason, perspective, and wisdom is washed away. This is the very definition of emotional immaturity. It is the inability to regulate one's own inner state. Imagine a small boat on a vast ocean. A mature mind has an anchor. It can feel the massive waves, the rising and falling of the water, but it remains fundamentally stable, moored to its own center. An immature mind has no anchor. When the wave of a powerful emotion comes, the boat is completely at its mercy. It is tossed violently, spun around, and often capsized. The person inside is not steering, they are simply surviving, flailing in the water until the storm, by its own accord, passes, and everyone in their vicinity gets pulled into the vortex. This is why interactions can feel so unpredictable and frightening. You might say something innocuous, something a more stable person would barely register, but it brushes against a hidden insecurity. It is the spark, and what follows is a full-blown emotional firestorm. In these moments, logic is useless. Trying to reason with someone who is completely consumed by their emotional storm is like trying to reason with a hurricane. The rational mind is offline. The only part of the brain that is functioning is the primitive, reactive part, the part that screams danger. It is the wounded child, believing it is fighting for its very survival. To onlookers, this appears as extreme overreaction, as drama, as a lack of control. And it is a lack of control, but not in the way we might judge it. It comes from a lack of skill. The skill of self-regulation is one of the most vital signs of true maturity, and it is a skill that must be cultivated, just like learning to play an instrument or strengthening a muscle. Without that training, the mind simply defaults to its old, ingrained patterns. The storm arises, it consumes, and it leaves a trail of wreckage in its wake for the person and for their relationships. The path to maturity, then, is not to prevent the storms from ever happening. The ocean of life will always have waves, but to learn, slowly and patiently, how to build and deploy one's own anchor. Projected shadows. One of the most difficult manifestations of this inner state, and a core aspect of psychological immaturity, is the inability to take ownership of one's own feelings and experiences. When the inner world is a tumultuous storm of unresolved pain, The mind, in a desperate act of self-preservation, seeks an external cause for its suffering. It cannot bear to look within and face the chaos. The pain is too great, so it projects. It takes its own inner darkness, its own fear, its own insecurity, its shadow, and casts it onto someone else. It finds a screen on which to play the horror movie that is happening inside. This is the mechanism behind blame. The defining statement of an immature mind is, "You made me feel this way." Notice the structure of that sentence. It transfers all power and all responsibility to the other person. The feeling, the anger, the sadness, the fear is experienced as an external object that was forced upon them. It absolves them of the responsibility of looking at the true origin of their suffering, which is their own internal state, their own unhealed wounds, their own reactive patterns. It is a defense mechanism, but a deeply disempowering one. Because if others have the power to make you feel bad, they also hold the key to making you feel good, reinforcing the cycle of dependency. This projection creates immense confusion and pain in relationships. The person on the receiving end is bewildered. They are being accused of intentions they did not have, of being a monster they do not recognize. They are fighting against a shadow, an illusion created by the other person's pain. No amount of self-defense works, because the conflict is not actually about the present moment. It is not about the dishes left in the sink or the comment that was made. It is about a lifetime of feeling inadequate or abandoned, and the person in front of them has simply become the convenient and current placeholder for that old pain. They are arguing with a ghost, and the person projecting is possessed by it. The journey toward maturity requires a monumental and courageous shift. It is the shift from, "You made me feel this way," to, "I feel this way in response to what you did." It sounds like a small change in words, but it is a seismic shift in consciousness. The second statement reclaims ownership. It acknowledges that the feeling belongs to me. It lives inside of me. My history, my sensitivities, my state of mind are all part of the reason this feeling has arisen. The other person's action was merely a trigger, a stimulus. By taking ownership of the feeling, we take back our power. We can now look at it, understand it, and decide what to do with it. We move from being a victim of our emotions to being a student of them. This is an act of profound strength, and it is the only way to stop casting our shadows and start tending to our own inner light. Nurturing wisdom. So, if the state we have described is one of suffering, rooted in a wounded past, dependent on approval, prone to emotional storms, and projecting its shadows, what then is the path forward? The answer is not to fix the person. It is not about waging war on one's own immaturity. Such an aggressive approach only creates more inner conflict. The path is not one of battle, but one of cultivation. It is the gentle, patient, and persistent work of nurturing wisdom. Just as a gardener does not yell at a barren patch of soil, but instead carefully tends to it, adding nutrients, water, and sunlight, we must learn to tend to the soil of our own mind. This process begins with a single radical act, turning our awareness inward. For a mind accustomed to constantly looking outside for validation or blame, this is a revolutionary shift. It means learning to sit with ourselves. It means daring to feel what we feel without immediately reacting or searching for a distraction. In the tradition of my practice, we begin with the breath. The breath is the most faithful anchor. It is always there, in the present moment. By focusing on the simple, physical sensation of the air entering and leaving the body, we create a small sanctuary, a point of stability amidst the mental chaos. This is the first step in creating that space between the stimulus and the response. From this place of anchored awareness, we can begin to practice observation without judgment. When a difficult thought or a painful emotion arises, the old habit is to either fight it or be consumed by it. The new practice is to simply notice it. Ah, there is the feeling of anger. There is the thought that I am not good enough. We label it softly. We observe it with a kind of gentle curiosity, the way a scientist might observe a strange new creature. Where do I feel this in my body? What does it feel like? Is it hot or cold? Is it moving or still? By engaging with our experience in this descriptive, non-judgmental way, we strip it of its power over us. We see that it is just a transient event, a cloud passing, a wave cresting and falling. This is not a quick fix, it is a lifelong practice. There will be days when the storm is too strong and we capsize. This is to be expected. And on those days, the practice extends to cultivating compassion for ourselves. Instead of self-criticism, I failed, I am still so immature, we can offer ourselves the kindness we would offer a dear friend. This is very difficult. It is okay. Let us begin again. This compassion is the water that allows the seeds of wisdom to grow. Over time, through this steady, compassionate attention, the mind begins to change. The foundation becomes stronger, the anchor becomes heavier, the person learns that their own presence, their own awareness is the safest harbor they will ever find. This is the nurturing of true maturity, true strength. In our world, we often misunderstand the nature of strength. We are taught to associate it with hardness, with force, with the ability to dominate or to be unaffected. We imagine an impenetrable wall, a rock that cannot be moved. But this is a brittle kind of strength. It is rigid. And what is rigid when placed under enough pressure shatters. True strength, the kind that arises from deep spiritual and psychological maturity, is of a completely different quality. It is not hardness, but resilience. It is not force, but stability. It is not being unaffected, but having the capacity to feel deeply without being broken. Think of the difference between an old rigid oak tree and a bamboo. In a powerful storm, the mighty oak, with its unyielding trunk, can be torn from the earth and splintered. It resists the wind, and in that resistance, it breaks. The bamboo, however, survives. Why? Because it is flexible. It bends with the wind, yielding to its force, sometimes touching the very ground. But when the wind passes, it returns to its upright position, unharmed. This is a model for true, mature strength. It is the ability to meet the challenges and pains of life with a flexible, adaptable mind. It is the ability to feel the full force of sadness, anger, or fear, to allow it to move through you and to trust that you will return to your center when it has passed. This strength is cultivated through the practices we have discussed. Every time we choose to observe an emotion instead of reacting to it, we are strengthening our capacity for resilience. Every time we take ownership of our feelings instead of blaming another, we are reinforcing our inner foundation. We are becoming less like the rigid oak and more like the supple bamboo. This strength does not need to announce itself. It is quiet, it is humble. It is the silent confidence of a person who knows they can weather their own inner storms because they are no longer afraid of them. They have been there before, and they know they will find their way back to stillness. This is also the source of true compassion. A person who is constantly fighting their own inner demons has very little energy left to offer anyone else. Their interactions are governed by their own needs and fears. But a person who has cultivated this inner stability has an abundance of energy. They are not easily threatened or angered. Because they are at peace with their own inner world, they can meet the world of others with an open and compassionate heart. They can listen without judgment. They can offer comfort without needing anything in return. Their strength is not a weapon to be used against others, but a sanctuary to be shared with them. It is the strength that heals, not the strength that breaks. This is the strength that defines genuine maturity. Inner sanctuary. Ultimately, the entire journey from immaturity to maturity, from suffering to peace, is the process of building an inner sanctuary. It is the discovery that everything we have been desperately seeking on the outside, safety, love, approval, and a sense of worth, can only be durably found within. The immature mind is like a homeless person, wandering through the world, shivering in the cold, begging for scraps of warmth at the door of others. It believes home is somewhere out there, in another person's validation, or in the attainment of some external goal. The journey of wisdom is the slow, dawning realization that we carry the blueprint and all the materials to build our own home right here, inside of us. This sanctuary is not a physical place. It is a state of being. It is a quality of mind that has been cultivated through dedicated practice. Its foundation is awareness. Its walls are self-compassion. Its roof is the wisdom that understands the transient nature of all things, both pleasant and painful. The furniture inside is made of equanimity, the ability to be with life as it is, without constant craving for it to be different. It is a place that we can retreat to at any moment, no matter what chaos is unfolding in the external world. We can simply close our eyes, turn our attention to the breath, and be home. To have access to this sanctuary changes everything. It doesn't mean life will no longer present us with pain. The storms will still come. People will still act in ways that are difficult. We will still experience loss and disappointment. But what changes is our relationship to these things. We no longer meet them with the panic of a homeless person caught in a blizzard. We meet them from the warmth and safety of our inner home. We can acknowledge the storm outside, but we know it cannot destroy our shelter. This gives us a profound sense of security that is not dependent on anything or anyone external. It is an unshakable peace. This is the ultimate fruit of the practice. It is the pinnacle of psychological and spiritual maturity. It is moving from being a fragile boat tossed on the ocean to becoming the ocean itself, vast, deep, and holding all the waves within a greater stillness. This is the freedom we are all deep down searching for. The freedom from fear, from dependency, from the endless, exhausting cycle of reaction. It is not an endpoint, but a way of living. It is the lifelong, beautiful, and deeply rewarding work of tending to the sanctuary within, making it a place of refuge, peace, and boundless love, first for ourselves and then for all beings. The journey from seeing immaturity as a flaw in another to seeing it as a reflection of a shared human suffering is one of the most profound shifts a person can make. It's the moment we stop being a critic in life's audience and step onto the stage with everyone else, realizing we all are just trying to learn our lines. It replaces the hardness of judgment with the softness of compassion, and it is in that softness that all true growth, for ourselves and for others, finally has the space to begin. For years, I felt this deep frustration and hurt, almost like a victim of other people's emotional inconsistency. I built entire narratives around how they were broken. This completely reframed it for me. The idea that it's all rooted in an inner wound, and that the real work is building my own inner sanctuary instead of demanding they fix theirs. It's both terrifying and the most liberating thing I've heard. Thank you. The work begins now.